Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast.
It's good to be here.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into a corner of the ecosystem that I think everyone, knows exists, but very few people understand the true mechanics of until they are right in the thick of it.
hmm
It's one of those things that just sort of sits in the background of our lives, something we might see once or twice a year at a service, but we rarely stop to think about how it actually comes together.
Well, it's one of those things that seems purely administrative on the surface, doesn't it?
Mm.
Or, technical.
Right, like a line item on a checklist.
Exactly. You have the venue, you have the flowers, the catering, and then the slideshow.
Yeah.
But when you actually peel back the layers, it is so deeply emotional and psychological.
Exactly. We are talking about the Memorial Slideshow. And I know the moment I say slideshow, half the audience probably thinks of like a boardroom meeting or
Quarterly projections, yeah.
yeah, or maybe a dusty old carousel projector in a basement from the 1970s. But in the context of mourning, in the context of saying goodbye, this isn't just a PowerPoint presentation.
Not at all.
It's described in our source material today as one of the most powerful modern tools for mourning.
It really is. And I think the mission for our deep dive today is to explore exactly how we go about curating an entire human life into a 5 or 10-minute window.
That's a huge task.
It's a fascinating intersection, right?
Right.
Where technology meets psychology and where, artistry meets grief. We're going to look at how you take 70, 80, maybe 90 years of life and compress it into a video file that can make a room full of people laugh and cry at the same time.
We're working off a really comprehensive guide for this. It's titled Crafting a Meaningful Digital Tribute, a Memorial Slideshow Guide. And it covers everything from the why to the how and even the what now.
It's very thorough.
So let's dive right in. The hook here, for me, was the central tension the source describes. It says that in moments of loss, words often fall short.
That's a universal experience, isn't it? When you lose someone, the emotions are so complex, so layered. It's not just sadness.
No.
It's joy, it's regret, shock, gratitude, confusion, all at once. And articulating that cocktail of emotions in a eulogy or even just in a conversation can feel impossible. Language has its limits.
We say things like, he was a good man, or she was a loving mother. And while those things are true, they just feel so flat.
They do. They don't capture the texture of the person.
Right. Words are abstract, but an image is immediate, and that is where the visual comes in. We've seen this shift in funeral culture, haven't we? Moving from these purely spoken, very stoic eulogies to something much more visual, much more narrative.
Absolutely. We are living in a visual age. That's part of it. But I think it's more than that. I think we're recognizing that a person's legacy isn't just a list of their achievements or a recitation of their resume.
It's the little things.
It's the way they smiled at a barbecue, or the way they held a baby, or that terrible sweater they wore in the 90s. Those visual cues, they trigger memories in a way that words sometimes just can't. They bypass the analytical part of the brain and go straight to the emotional center.
So the guiding question for us today, and for anyone listening who might be facing this task or just wants to understand it, is this. How do you take a shoebox, or, let's be real in 2026, a chaotic hard drive or a cloud account
A total digital mess.
of scattered photos and turn it into a living story? How do you curate a legacy from a pile of JPEGs?
It's a massive responsibility. You are, in essence, acting as the film editor for human life.
It is. So let's unpack the psychology first. Segment 1 of our dive is all about why visuals matter so much in this specific context. The source makes a really interesting point about the passive nature of a slideshow.
This is a crucial distinction. Think about a eulogy. When you're sitting in a service listening to someone speak, it requires active listening. You have to process the syntax, the meaning, the tone.
You're engaged.
You are. You're watching the speaker. Maybe you're worried if they're going to break down. It takes cognitive energy. You are on.
You have to perform the role of the listener.
Yeah.
You nod, you make eye contact.
Exactly. But a slideshow, it allows for what the source calls passive comfort. The lights go down. The music starts. You don't have to look at anyone. You don't have to nod along or analyze anything. You can just sit there in the dark and let the images wash over you.
So you're saying you can just let it happen. It doesn't demand anything from you.
Yes. It offers a space for emotion without requiring participation. And for someone who is just overwhelmed by grief, who might be barely holding it together, that passivity is a gift.
It's a safe harbor.
It really is. You can cry in the dark without feeling like people are watching you. It gives you a break from the social pressure of the funeral.
That makes so much sense. It's like a
Yeah.
little break in the storm of the ceremony itself. And the source also mentions this idea of humanization. I love this concept.
Oh, it's vital. Often, especially if a person died after a long illness or at a very old age, the most recent memory everyone has is of the patient or the elderly relative.
The hospital bed.
Yes. The medical equipment, the frailty. That image can be very sticky. It can overshadow the decades of vitality that came before.
Right. It's hard to remember the vibrant 30-year-old when the last image you have is the sick 80-year-old.
And the slideshow just strips that away. It acts as a time machine. It reintroduces the person behind the diagnosis, behind the dates and titles. You see them as a teenager with a bad haircut and a hopeful look.
You see them as a young parent, exhausted but smiling.
You see them as a vibrant friend dancing at a wedding. It reminds the room that this person had a whole, full life before the end.
It's almost like reclaiming their identity from the illness.
Precisely. It restores their full humanity. It balances the scales of memory.
There's also this element of the collective experience that I found really touching. The source talks about the slideshow acting as a bridge.
Well, think about a funeral or a celebration of life. You have a room full of disparate people. You have the work colleagues who only knew the professional side.
John from accounting.
John from accounting, exactly. Then you have the grandkids who only knew the gentle grandparent who baked cookies. You have the old college buddies who knew the wild side, the person who stayed out all night. They're all in the same room, but they are mourning different versions of the same person.
And the slideshow unites them.
It does. It invites everyone into what the source calls a shared memory. When a photo flashes up of the deceased doing something characteristic, maybe a specific goofy pose they always did, or a look they gave over their glasses, you hear that ripple of laughter or recognition go through the room.
Oh, that moment where everyone goes, oh, or chuckles at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's not an isolated experience of grief anymore. It's a communal acknowledgement of, yes, that was him. We all know that.
It connects the dots.
The colleagues see the grandparent side and think, I didn't know he was so soft. The grandkids see the college side and think, wow, Grandpa was cool. It creates a 360-degree view of the person.
It creates a complete picture.
It does. The Funeral Program Site Organization, which is referenced in our material, views the slideshow as a critical extension of storytelling. It complements the printed programs and the prayer cards. It's not just filler. It's a central pillar of the narrative. It brings the text in the program to life.
To get to that beautiful moment of shared memory, someone has to do the work. And that brings us to segment 2, the emotional labor of the gather.
The gather. It sounds like a harvest, doesn't it? But in the modern era, it's more like an archaeological dig.
It really is. The source calls it a treasure hunt, but let's be honest, it's a logistical nightmare.
It is the defining challenge of modern photography. 30 years ago, you went to the hall closet, you grabbed the 3 photo albums, the ones with the sticky magnetic pages, and that was it.
That was your source material.
You sat on the floor and you picked the best ones. Simple.
Now, it's everywhere. It's completely fragmented.
It's scattered. You have physical prints in a box under the bed. You have digital files on an old laptop that might not even turn on. Do you even have the charging cable for a 2010 laptop anymore?
Right.
You have photos on your phone, photos on your spouse's phone, photos on Facebook, Instagram, iCloud, Dropbox, old USB drives that you have no idea what's on them.
My observation here is that you really have to be a digital archaeologist. You're excavating a life from the cloud. You are hunting down passwords as much as you are hunting down pictures.
And the source gives some very practical advice here. Do not try to do this alone, and do not wait until the night before.
Oh, God, no.
Identifying potential sources immediately is key.
Right. You have to send out the bat signal, tell friends, tell relatives, check your phones, check your old hard drives.
Because the stress of a deadline, trying to guess an iCloud password, or find a specific dongle for a hard drive 2 hours before the service, that is not something you want to add to the burden of grief. You need to crowdsource this effort.
But beyond the logistics, there's the emotional side of the gather. The source calls it an emotional minefield.
And this is something people often underestimate. They think, oh, I'll just look through some photos. It'll be nice. It'll be a trip down memory lane.
Yeah, that's not what it is.
No. Sorting through photos triggers these rapid-fire emotions.
Yeah.
You're flipping through decades in seconds.
It's volatile.
Very. You might see a photo from a wedding and feel joy. Then the very next photo is from a time that was really difficult. A divorce, a period of unemployment, and you feel regret. Then you see a photo of them looking healthy, and you feel the sorrow of the loss all over again. It is emotional whiplash.
It's exhausting.
It is. And for some people, looking at these photos is healing. It helps them process. It helps them say goodbye. For others, it is absolutely draining. It feels like reopening the wound over and over and over again.
I think that's an important validation for anyone listening. If you find yourself completely drained by looking at old JPEGs, that's normal. You aren't doing it wrong.
Completely normal. There is no right way to feel during this process. The expert insight here is all about flexibility. If you need to stop, stop. If you need to hand the task to a cousin or a friend because you just can't look at the screen anymore, do it.
Delegate.
Delegate. And let go of perfectionism.
And honor the essence. That's the goal the source highlights. You aren't trying to document every single day they lived. You aren't building a forensic timeline for a documentary.
Well,
You're trying to capture the flavor of the life.
exactly. You are curating a feeling, not creating a historical record. If you miss a year, it's okay. If you don't have a photo of that one specific vacation, it's okay.
Which leads us perfectly into segment 3, curation. Because once you've gathered this mountain of photos, let's say you've managed to scrape 5,000 photos from every device known to man, you can't show them all.
Please do not show them all.
The source is very specific here. It suggests a numbers game. What's the magic number?
The range provided is 40 to 100 images.
That seems low. If someone lived for 80 years, that's barely one photo per year. Maybe less.
It sounds low until you do the math on the timing, which we'll get to. But the less is more argument is critical here. It's all about attention economics.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
If you overcrowd the timeline, if you're flashing a new photo every 1.5 seconds just to fit them all in, you dilute the emotional impact. The audience stops seeing the image. They just see a blur.
A barrage of colors.
Right. You want to give people time to actually look at the face, to recognize the location, to see the expression, to feel the moment.
You want engagement, not just consumption.
Exactly. You want them to have a micro moment of connection with each slide.
So how do we choose? If we have to cut 5,000 photos down to, say, 50, what makes the cut?
You prioritize personality and expression over technical perfection. This is one of my favorite parts of the source material, what it calls the blurry exception.
Oh, I love this concept. Tell us about the blurry exception.
We all have those high-resolution professional portraits. Maybe it's a corporate headshot or a formal wedding photo where everyone is lined up perfectly, and those are fine. They're technically good photos.
But they're stiff.
They're often very stiff, they're masked. The person is posing for the camera, they're presenting a version of themselves.
Right.
Then you have a grainy, low-light photo taken on an iPhone 4 in a dimly lit bar, or a blurry action shot from a backyard barbecue. But in that photo, the person is throwing their head back laughing, their eyes are crinkled, and they look exactly like themselves. They're unguarded.
The source says, take the blurry laugh over the high-res stiffness every time.
Every single time. Because you are mourning the person, not the pixel count.
Mm-hmm.
Authenticity resonates more deeply than clarity. You want to capture the spark, that glint in the eye that says, that's him, that's her.
It's about the mix too, right? You don't want 50 perfect portraits.
Correct. You want to balance solo portraits with family gatherings, with milestones, and this is crucial, with everyday snapshots.
Everyday snapshots, like what?
The photo of them mowing the lawn in their old sneakers, the photo of them cooking pasta in a messy kitchen, the photo of them asleep on the couch with the dog.
Why are those important? They seem so
Right.
mundane.
Because that is where life actually happened.
Yeah.
We celebrate the milestones, but we live in the mundane. Those are the textures of a life. When you miss someone, you don't usually miss the way they looked in a tuxedo at a wedding. You miss the way they looked drinking coffee on a Tuesday morning.
Wow, that is profound. It's the texture of existence.
And that's why candid almost always wins over posed. Posed photos show us how the person wanted to be seen. Candid photos shows who they actually were.
Okay, so we have our 50 or 60 photos. We've embraced the blurry laugh. We have the dog on the couch. Now we have to put them in order. Segment 4.
Structuring the narrative arc.
This is where we move from a collage to a story. Random sequencing can be really jarring. You don't want to jump from their 80th birthday to their second birthday and back to their wedding without a clear reason. It just confuses the brain.
The source outlines 3 main structures. Let's walk through them. First, the classic, chronological.
Childhood to adulthood to later years. This is the most intuitive. It mirrors the biological reality of life. It's also the most helpful for the audience.
Why is that? Because, as we mentioned earlier, many people in the room only know one chapter of the deceased. If I only knew you as a colleague in your 40s, Seeing your childhood photos at the beginning helps me understand where you came from. It builds a complete biography in the mind of the viewer. It answers the question, how did they become the person I knew?
It tells the origin story.
Exactly. It feels like a journey. It has a natural flow.
What about the second structure, thematic?
This one is interesting if the person had very distinct pillars in their life. You might group photos by roles. Here's a section on work, here's a section on hobbies, here's faith, here's friendships.
So instead of a timeline, it's like facets of a gem.
That's a great way to put it. It works well if the chronology is a bit spotty, maybe you don't have many childhood photos, or if their life was deeply defined by these specific passions. If they were a dedicated musician, maybe the music section deserves its own distinct chapter.
And the third one, the emotional structure. This one seems trickier.
It is. This is the most abstract and arguably the most difficult to pull off, but it can be incredibly powerful. You trace feelings, you start with images of joy, then maybe move to images of growth or struggle, then love, and end on legacy. It's guided by the vibe rather than the calendar.
That sounds like it requires a really good editor's eye.
It does. It's very impressionistic, my advice. If you're unsure, stick to chronological. It's the natural flow of a life, and it rarely fails.
One tip the source mentions regarding pacing the life is ensuring representation of different life stages.
This is a common pitfall. Often, we have the most photos from the last 5 to 10 years because that's when everyone had smartphones. We document everything now,
Right.
so you end up with a slideshow that is like 90% old age and 10% everything else.
I've seen those. It feels like you're only mourning the elderly version of them.
Exactly. And you have to actively fight that bias. You need to dig for the childhood photos, the young adult photos. You need to show that they were young once, that they had vitality, that they had bad haircuts in the 80s.
That they wore bell-bottoms in the 70s.
Yes. It's so important to represent the whole arc.
Right. Don't let the recency bias skew the legacy. Honor the youth as much as the wisdom.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have the photos, we have the order. Now we need to add the sensory layer. Segment 5, the sensory layer, music, and timing.
Music is the emotional thermostat of the slideshow.
That is a great phrase, an emotional thermostat.
It sets the temperature. If you choose the wrong song, it can be jarring or distracting. It can fight the visuals.
Right.
But if you choose the right one, it opens the heart. It guides the audience. It tells them how to feel.
The source has a strong recommendation here. Instrumental versus lyrics.
Yes, the recommendation leans heavily toward instrumental tracks.
Why is that? I feel like people always want to use their song, which usually has lyrics, My Way or Wind Beneath My Wings.
And you can use their song, but you have to be really careful. Here's the cognitive science behind it. The brain struggles to process written text if you have captions. Visual information, looking at the photos and faces, and auditory language lyrics, all at the same time.
It's a traffic jam in the brain.
It is. It's too much input. If the lyrics are telling a specific story, I walked down the street and met a girl, but the photo is showing the deceased fishing on a boat. It creates cognitive dissonance. The brain goes, wait, is he walking or fishing?
I see.
Instrumental music supports the visuals, didn't compete with them. It provides a bed for the emotions to lie on.
That makes sense. It lifts the photos up rather than talking over them.
Unless, and this is the exception, unless the lyrics align perfectly with the tribute. If the lyrics are thematically perfect and you time the slides to match, go for it. But generally, strings, piano, acoustic guitar, these are safe, timeless choices.
And obviously you consider the deceased's preferences. If they hated classical music, don't play Mozart just because it sounds sad.
Please don't. That feels inauthentic. If they loved classic rock, find an instrumental version of a classic rock ballad. It acknowledges their taste without the distraction of screaming vocals or a heavy drum solo.
Now let's talk about the math. The mathematics of emotion, as we're calling it. Tempo and duration.
This is where the rubber meets the road, technically. The source suggests the 4-6 second rule.
That's how long a slide stays on screen.
Yes, 4 to 6 seconds.
That feels, well, is that long or short?
It's the Goldilocks zone. Less than 4 seconds, and you feel rushed. The eye doesn't have time to settle. You can't focus on the face before it disappears. It feels frantic.
And more than 6.
More than 6 seconds, and the mind starts to wander. You've seen the photo, you've processed it, and now you're just waiting. It creates a lag.
But you adjust for complexity, right?
Yes, absolutely. If it's a solo portrait against a plain background, 4 seconds is plenty. If it's a group shot of 20 people at a family reunion, leave it up for 6 or 7 seconds. The eye needs time to scan the faces to find the deceased. Where is he? Oh, there he is in the back.
And the tempo of the music dictates this too.
It's a dance. Slower music naturally encourages longer viewing times. It signals to the audience, reflect, take your time. Faster music demands quicker transitions.
Which brings up a risk. If the music is too fast, the slideshow feels like a music video, not a memorial.
Exactly. You want reflection, not montage.
Mhm.
You weren't trying to hype the crowd up. You were trying to create a space for memory.
So we know what we want to create, but how do we actually build it? Segment 6, tools of the trade and technical execution.
This is where people get intimidated. They think, I'm not a video editor. I don't know what a timeline is. But the good news is what the source calls the democratization of editing.
You do not need to be a pro editor. You don't need to know how to use Final Cut Pro or Premiere.
Not at all. The source lists accessible tools that most people already have access to. Canva, iMovie, Windows Photos, Adobe Express, even PowerPoint or Google Slides.
I think people forget PowerPoint can do this. You can just set the transition time for each slide and export the whole thing as a video.
It can, and it's very familiar to many people. The focus here is on drag-and-drop interfaces. These tools allow families to focus on the storytelling. Does this photo look good here? Not on learning a complex software interface.
Here is where it gets really interesting for me. What the source implies is visual etiquette. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
The rule of restraint. This is so critical.
Tell us about text and transitions.
Text should be used sparingly. A name and dates at the start. Maybe a closing message like, forever in our hearts. That's it.
So no captions on every photo. Here is Uncle Bob at the zoo, 1984. Here is Uncle Bob eating a hot dog.
Please avoid it. It forces the audience to read instead of feel. It turns a tribute into a documentary or a corporate presentation. It engages the analytical brain, not the emotional brain.
Let the image speak for itself.
Let it speak. The context is usually self-evident or just doesn't matter. You see the joy. You don't need the date.
And transitions. I remember the days of the Star Wars wipe or the checkerboard transition in PowerPoint.
We must leave those in the past. The source advises subtle transitions, fades, dissolves, a simple cross dissolve.
Oh, what's wrong with a little flair?
Because the transition should be invisible. It should just feel like one memory melting into the next. A flashy animation draws attention to the editing. You look at the screen and think, whoa, cool effect. Instead of looking at the person thinking, I miss him. It breaks the spell.
It's about respect, really. The technology should be humble in this moment.
It is. A cross dissolve is respectful. A spinning cube transition is, well, it's distracting.
And finally, the ideal length. We touched on this with the photo count.
The 5 to 10 minute sweet spot?
Why is this the limit? Why not 20 minutes? If they live 90 years, don't they deserve 20 minutes?
It's purely about attention spans and emotional capacity. After 10 minutes, even the most loving audience starts to drift. Their eyes get tired. The emotional intensity plateaus. You want to leave them wanting a little more, not checking their watches or shifting in their seats.
It's better to have 7 minutes of intense, beautiful connection than 20 minutes of it dragging on.
Precisely. Limits create focus. You want to distill the essence, not dilute it.
So you've built it. It's 8 minutes long. It has instrumental music. It's chronological. You are ready for the funeral. Wait, not yet. Segment 7, the review and the event.
Step 7 is the safety net, reviewing with compassion.
The source suggests a buddy system.
You cannot trust your own eyes at this point. You've looked at these photos 500 times. You are emotionally compromised. You are tired. You need a trusted family member or friend to watch it with you.
What are they looking for?
Errors, for one. Did you accidentally include a photo of an ex-wife that shouldn't be there? Did you get the birth date wrong on the title card? Typos happen.
A second pair of eyes is crucial.
But also emotional pacing. They can tell you, hey, this middle section drags a bit, or we need more photos of him as a dad. They have a fresh perspective.
They can see the forest, you're stuck in the trees.
Exactly.
There's also the concept of the emotional rehearsal.
This is so important. The family, the immediate mourners, should not see the slideshow for the very first time at the public ceremony because it is going to wreck you. And that's okay. But you want to have that first raw, visceral reaction in private. You want to cry your eyes out on the couch 3 days before the funeral. You want to get the ugly cry out of the way in a safe space.
So that when you are at the service.
So that when you are at the service, you can watch it with a bit more composure, or at least without the shock of seeing those images for the first time.
Yeah.
You can actually see the tribute rather than just being blinded by the tears. You look around the room and see other people enjoying it.
That is such wise, practical advice. process the shock privately so you can experience the tribute publicly.
Yes, gives you a little bit of emotional armor for the day.
And then the boring but critical stuff. Logistics for the day of.
This is where nightmares happen if you aren't careful. Technical failure is the last thing you need. Nothing kills the mood like a buffering wheel.
So, file formats.
Export as an MP4. Do not rely on streaming from the internet church or venue. Wi-Fi is notoriously bad. Do not rely on a proprietary file format like a Keynote file that the venue's PC can't open. MP4 is the universal language of video. It will play on almost anything.
And redundancy.
Backups. Cloud, USB, multiple devices. Have it on your phone. Have it on a thumb drive. Have it on your cousin's laptop. Email it to the funeral director a week in advance.
Because if the Wi-Fi goes down or the laptop crashes...
You do not want to be the person explaining why the tribute isn't playing while everyone waits in silence. That is a specific kind of stress you do not need on that day.
And check the venue.
Test the screen size. Test the audio. Sound checks are not just for rock bands. They're for funerals, too. Make sure the volume is right. Not too loud that it's jarring. Not too quiet that people are straining to hear.
We're coming to the end of the process now. The service is over. The slideshow played perfectly. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. But the source suggests the journey isn't over. Segment 8. Agency and legacy.
This touches on the agency in grief.
What does that mean?
Grief often feels like something that happens to us. We feel helpless. The waves just wash over us. We are passive victims of loss. But creating a slideshow, that is an active process. It is purposeful action.
It gives you something to do with your hands and your mind when you feel lost.
Yes. It restores a sense of agency. I can't bring them back, but I can tell their story properly. I can curate their memory. That is a psychologically healing act for the creator. It transforms grief into a project of love. It gives the pain a purpose.
And for the slideshow itself, it has an afterlife.
It does. It becomes a digital heirloom.
So it's not just for the funeral anymore?
No. It gets shared privately among family. It gets uploaded to memorial websites. It gets revisited on anniversaries. Grandchildren who are born 10 years from now will watch that slideshow to know who their grandfather was. It becomes the definitive visual history.
It becomes the documentary of their existence.
Exactly. It preserves the smile, the laugh, the essence of who they were.
I like this idea of it being integrated with other materials, too. The source mentions how the slideshow works with printed programs.
Yes. If the program has a specific quote or a particular photo, the slideshow can echo that. It creates a unified storytelling experience. It feels intentional and thoughtful rather than fragmented.
So, what does this all mean? We've gone from the shoebox to the screen. We've gone from the panic of the gather to the peace of the review.
I think if we summarize the impact, it's about presence, not expertise. Sincerity matters more than polish.
You don't need to be an artist. You don't need to be a tech wizard. You just need to care.
That's it. As the source concludes, a slideshow speaks softly but powerfully when words are enough. It reminds everyone that a life was lived, loved, will not be forgotten.
It is a shift in how we remember, isn't it? We are moving from static memories like stone and paper to these dynamic living archives.
It is the digitization of memory, but in the most human way possible. It allows the memory to move and breathe.
So here is a final provocative thought for you, listener. And this is something I want you to really sit with. We spend our lives curating our social media feeds, showing our best angles, our avocado toast, our vacations. But if you had to curate the 5 minutes that represented your life, for real, which 40 photos would make the cut?
That is a daunting question.
Would it be the perfect portraits? Or would it be the blurry ones, the ones where you're laughing so hard it hurts, the ones where you're covered in mud or paint or just living?
I think we all know the answer to that.
Maybe snap a few more candid ones today, just in case.
Indeed.
See you in the next Steam Dive.